Afternoon. Plenty of spring sunshine, and in that sunshine feeling pleasantly warm with temperatures a touch higher than today with highs of around 16 or 17 Celsius. Later on, as we go through tomorrow evening, we are going to see a bit more cloud across parts of Northern Ireland. Winds strengthening here too, all due to this front that's trying to push in from the west. This will bring some outbreaks of rain here as we go through the evening, and perhaps to western parts of Scotland too overnight. Elsewhere, it's looking like a largely dry night. There will be a bit more cloud than we've seen through some recent nights. As a result, temperatures perhaps not dropping quite as low as they have done recently. Otherwise, through Easter Sunday, it's again, for much of England and Wales at least, looking like another fine day. Yes, there'll be a bit more cloud around than of late, but as we head through the middle part of the day in particular, it is looking largely sunny. Outbreaks of rain through the morning across Scotland should clear away towards the north, but then some wet weather is going to push in from the west later on, and that will sweep across the UK into Monday, bringing a change to more unsettled conditions.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
from 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 7 o'clock and I'm Darren Grimes in for Laurence Fox. If you're listening on DAB Plus and you're stuck in a queue, then we're going to help you pass the time and keep you informed. First up, we're going to be talking about the migrant barge. It's split opinion in the Conservative Party, but is it actually going to work? I'm speaking to an immigration lawyer and I'm sure we may not see eye to eye, so you won't want to miss that one. Then I debate the week's news with the Fox and Hounds panel. I'm sitting in for the Fox and welcome two news hounds to digest the Trump indictment, King Charles' support for a report into royal family slavery links, and that Labour campaign post. And finally, the Easter getaway is underway. Will you be heading to a beach or local beauty spot this weekend? The government has pledged to ban those pesky pollutant plastic-based wet wipes as well. But is that enough to clean up our rivers and coastlines? And don't forget, most importantly, is your voice. I want to hear from you. Send your views my way, gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after the news headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Darren, thank you. Good evening. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Opposition politicians in Scotland are urging the SNP to be fully transparent about its finances after it emerged the firm which audits the party's accounts has resigned. Johnston Carmichael says it made the decision after reviewing its client portfolio. Earlier this week, the former SNP chief executive, Peter Murrell, who is Nicola Sturgeon's husband, was arrested by police investigating the party's finances. He was released without charge pending further investigation. Police in Northern Ireland are warning their officers could be targeted by dissidents in Londonderry this Easter. That's ahead of a state visit by the US President, who's arriving in Belfast on Tuesday. The PSNI says it's received strong intelligence that attacks are being planned for Bank Holiday Monday. MI5 raised the terrorism threat level in the country to severe following the shooting of a senior detective, John Caldwell. Russia has charged a US journalist with espionage. Evan Gershkovich, who works for the Wall Street Journal, is accused of trying to obtain Russian military secrets on behalf of Washington. He pleaded not guilty earlier this week and maintains he was working as a journalist. But Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, says he was caught red-handed. President Joe Biden has described the claims of espionage as ridiculous and demanded his release. The Foreign Secretary is calling for a de-escalation of tensions in the Middle East after Israel launched airstrikes in Lebanon and the Gaza Strip. Israel says they acted in retaliation to Palestinian rocket attacks. In the occupied West Bank, 2 Israeli sisters have been shot and killed in their car, and their mother is in a critical condition in hospital. It comes amid a rise in violence in Jerusalem too during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, as well as the Jewish Passover holiday. The Labour Party has stood by an advert that claims Rishi Sunak doesn't think child sex abusers should go to prison. Labour posted the ad on Twitter, pitching itself as the party of law and order, but it's drawn criticism from MPs, with senior Tory ministers accusing Labour of a vile and desperate campaign strategy. And S Club 7's Paul Cattermole has passed away, aged 46, only weeks after the pop group announced a comeback tour. He was found at his home in Dorset yesterday, and police say there were no suspicious circumstances. In a statement, the family and the band said there are no words to describe their deep sadness. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back to Darren.
Cheers very much for your company, folks. I'm in for Laurence Fox. Now, first up, Sir Keir Starmer's case for becoming Britain's next Prime Minister is built around the man having loyally integrity that you can trust. Well, the knight in shining armour has fallen from his high horse, and his troops are refusing to actually defend him over Labour's latest attack ad. Last night there was consensus across Twitter, doesn't happen often, as commentators of both left and right came out in condemnation of a Labour advert that blamed Rishi Sunak for being soft on paedophile sentencing guidelines that have seen 4,500 adults convicted of child sex offences walk free since 2010. Now, yet, despite the condemnation from across the political divide, Labour have actually doubled down their attack material, with another poster being tweeted out claiming Rishi Sunak doesn't care to deal with violent gun criminals either. Now, folks, the political blog Guido Fawkes, they've actually highlighted that Rishi Sunak, elected as an MP in 2015 and never holding any ministerial responsibilities in that area since then, can it be possibly responsible? However, Sir Keir Starmer, the then Director of Public Prosecutions, who actually sat on the Sentencing Council, was very much involved. You see, the Sentencing Council sets sentencing rules and the Crown Prosecution Service sets prosecuting rules. The current rules for the sexual assault of children were last updated in 2013. Now, who was the head of the CPS and sat on the Sentencing Council in 2013, you might well ask? It was none other than Sir Keir Starmer. Talk about scoring one hell of an own goal. You see, in attempting to attack the Prime Minister, slimy Sir Spineless has actually reminded us of his own track record. He's now made so many U-turns, folks, that he's at risk of ending up in the political U-bend. He may well be one of the last now banned wet wipes to be flushed into Britain's sewers. You see, lefty lawyers like him, in my view, are responsible for many of our nation's current woes. Take the Labour attacks on Suella Braverman for her comments on child sexual exploitation by grooming gangs. This is partly a party with form on this issue. In 2017, Labour MP Sarah Champion, the Member of Parliament for Rotherham, which was of course caught up in far too much of this cover-up of child rape, was sacked for writing that for gang-related child sexual exploitation, the convictions have largely been against British Pakistani men. Now, I'm afraid, folks, it's the identity-obsessed left that's responsible for much of the obsession with political correctness that, frankly, failed young girls that were left to be raped and groomed by racists that viewed them as nothing other than white trash. So I think in reminding us of that fact, Labour has likely reminded many that it's often stood on the wrong side of public opinion on this issue. Now, tonight we're asking you, our viewers, more important than me, what you think about the big issues of the day. Let me know your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. I've got you up in front of me here. Or tweet @gbnews. Now, it can't be denied that we have more asylum requests than we can actually process right now. Yesterday, folks, 77 people crossed the channel in small boats, according to official stats. On Wednesday, the number was a staggering 492. In total, 4,500 people that we know of have been detected crossing the English Channel in small boats this year. It's, of course, divided the main political parties as well as the nation. So just what do we do with people that arrive here without documentation and a story that has to be surely investigated? No one seems to have a workable answer. And regardless of your thoughts on the reason people actually make the crossing when they do and the reasons, the motivations for that, what do we do when they hear that to house people, to keep people safe, all of those really important issues? Well, a man who knows a thing or two about this is the immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan joins me now. Ivan, thank you very much for your time. Now, that stat there that I mentioned, 4,500 people this year that we know about, this barge that's set to be moored in Portland Port, which is a barge off of Dorset, 500 people are saying in that barge. 4,500, where are we going to put everyone else if we're not putting them in hotels anymore?
Indeed. In fact, the barge only accounts for about less than 0.5% of the people in hotels. There's also to remember that we house in hotels many Ukrainians who are not refugees. So it doesn't give you a true picture of the people in hotels. The problem the government has is going to, if you look at the trend over the last 2 years, we can expect small boat crossings in the Channel to rise to between 60 to 70,000 people this year. So the barge may be good if we had another about 150 more barges. So we'd need them up and down the coastline of the UK. It's just another gimmick. Amnesty International said today it's political theatre by the Home Office. And that's exactly what it is. It's the government saying, look, we're doing something, but it's not going to solve the problem. What they need to do is to properly assess genuine asylum seekers within a reasonable time. Those that are not genuine, remove them. Please remove them. They should remove anyone, especially those coming from safe third countries. We have the powers to remove them within 2 weeks. Why are we not doing that? Why are we putting them up in accommodation?
Because, I mean, the public, you know, half of Britons are saying that barges are acceptable housing for asylum seekers. So, you know, were you to poll the public, I imagine building more of these barges. We're an island nation. You could probably build quite a few barges. I mean, is that what the sort of thing that we're going to see? Do you think that's going to be the government's response to combating this issue?
No, if we're going to house them for years on upon end, then yes. But we don't want to do that. Look, we need a proper asylum system that considers asylum applications efficiently, fairly, and removes those people who are failed asylum seekers. And that's what we don't have. Instead, what we're saying is, look, the Home Office is saying we're really slow at doing this. We're not deciding asylum applications. So what we'll do is we'll put them up in barges in the meantime. No, get your act together, Suella Braverman. If she's watching this show, please recruit more people, train the right people, decide applications within a reasonable time. I've got clients waiting over a year for asylum interviews. That's 1 year. Now, that can't be acceptable. And instead of blaming asylum seekers, and by the way, you don't need to have documents if you're an asylum seeker. You can come completely undocumented.
But most of my viewers, right, and I know for a fact this will be happening up and down the country, they'll be screaming at their television saying, a lot of these people aren't asylum seekers. They're illegal migrants who have come here looking for work, right? Or have come here from maybe countries like Albania, yes, and are getting lost away from the actual official systems and are getting up to no good. They're saying they're not asylum seekers, so stop calling them asylum seekers.
Indeed, I agree with you. Look, don't blame Albanians for looking for work here. If you have strong deterrence, if I'm an Albanian and I know that if I go across the UK and within 2 weeks I'm going to end up back in Albania, I'm not going to pay the money to go there in the first place. We need effective deterrence, and the only way we do that is have proper, robust removal of those failed, non-genuine asylum seekers.
So then are you saying that, you know, if we have this robust removal, we bring that about, won't it be your profession that seeks to stop that through the European Court?
Look, no. I promote genuine asylum seekers. I will not, and I'm sure many of my colleagues will say exactly the same thing. We want to protect those people that are being persecuted. I've seen over the last 3 years the hearts of this nation growing colder towards people fleeing persecution. It's not what we do. It's just not the British way that we do things. We've warmly welcomed those people fleeing persecution, and we should continue to welcome them in the future.
Yeah, but when you've got 500,000 people net coming here last year, the British people are saying, well, hang on a minute. For people already here, we've got a housing crisis, we've got a healthcare crisis, we've got an education crisis. What are we going to actually do with people when they arrive here? Britain can't ultimately be the end destination for everybody that wants to come here, can it?
I agree with you, but the data doesn't bear that out. Look, we're 17th on the league of EN countries accepting asylum seekers. For every 10,000 population in this country, we take 7. Germany takes 14. We actually don't take enough asylum seekers. I disagree with you.
No, but France is rejecting far more than we are, though.
Well, I don't know about who they're rejecting, but the point is, genuine asylum seekers, we should have more. We should process more. We don't take our fair share. And that's a fact. We're way down on the list.
Come on, but you're talking 500,000 people came here last year seeking asylum, many of them from Ukraine, Afghanistan and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
No, I have to correct you. Hong Kong didn't seek asylum, neither did the Ukrainians.
Well,
no
Hong Kong
Ukrainians...
British overseas nationals' passports were able to come here last year, so a lot of them did come over here last year.
Indeed, and that was through a scheme that government opened up and welcomed.
Yeah, but they are seeking asylum. It might not be asylum seekers, but they are coming here to seek asylum from Chinese tyranny.
No, they're coming here because the government's allowed them to come here on a special visa programme. Ukrainians were allowed to come here on a special visa programme. No, asylum seekers are a fraction of what we should be taking. And those are the facts. And it's the rhetoric, the misrepresentation of the facts of the British people. If they knew that we actually take a fraction of other countries.
I just want to give you a quote, because there's a quote this is in the Mail today, and it's quoting a Sudanese refugee who told a broadcaster, I don't want to go, and that's talking about the Dorset barge, I would go homeless. And a second one said that he can't move and urged people to protest outside his hotel, actually advocating that there's disruption on the streets of Britain. When people read these sort of stories and people have illegally entered this country, people feel, rightly in my view, really actually quite upset that this is allowed to go on. Because if you are genuinely seeking refuge away from bomb, bullet and all the rest of it, and you're not seeking to flee away from cheeses and baguettes in France, which is what a lot of people are doing because they're coming here from France, then people look at the disrespect for the British taxpayer and rightly feel pretty aggrieved by that.
No, I can understand that, but look, the mindset's all wrong around this problem. People coming here, we have an obligation under the Refugee Convention. We've got to comply with that. It's not like we're doing you a favour by considering your asylum claim. And we've got to get off this attitude that we're doing you a favour, mate, because you're coming here. You should be grateful for, even if we stick you in a barge, you should be grateful. Look, I'd want to be treated fairly if I was claiming asylum in another country. I'd expect the same treatment to be given to those that are coming to this country.
So tell us then, tell my viewers, how many people would be enough? How many people seeking asylum should, in your view, should we allow here?
We should be taking 100,000 a year, asylum seekers. And look, that quota seems like a lot, but it isn't. And the UNHCR and the other countries should get together and every country should take their fair share.
And then where should we put them then? 100,000 people, where should they go?
Well, if you decide an asylum application within a reasonable time, which I say should be no longer than 3 months, that's the maximum you should take, then they can work. If they've been granted, they can work, they can integrate themselves into our society. Those that are not genuine, remove them. We've got the power to do that. Why are we not removing them?
Well, you keep saying that, though, but then when we do actually attempt to do that, it's held up in the courts.
Yes. Look, the ultimate solution is we need an agreement with France. We need an agreement.
Well, that's not going to happen. I'm afraid that's utopianism.
That is the solution.
It's not going to happen because the French don't want the people staying there. They would rather them do actually make the journey and travel over to Britain because then they're our problem.
Well, we were doing that with the Dublin Convention before we left the EU. We need a treaty akin to the Dublin Convention. And whatever the French need, we need to find out what it is that we need to horse trade with them to get that treaty back in place. And once we have that treaty back in place, if I knew that if I'm coming to the UK from France, I'm going to get sent back, I would not make the journey. That is a deterrent that we need, not putting up people in barges, not this political theatre, and it's just... It's embarrassing.
Well, hey, I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to make your blood boil, I've no doubt, but I think we need to leave the ECHR, I'm afraid, because I think ultimately the British people should be the ones who can determine who doesn't come here. And I don't think that's anything to do with the EU. Of course, that court is completely separate. But ultimately, you know, Brexit, we voted Brexit for a reason.
As a journalist, you have freedom of expression, don't you? It's because of the ECHR that you have that right.
Come on. Before the ECHR was brought about, we had freedom of expression in Britain.
Well, let me correct you. It's not the case. A leading case that came before the court, the Human Rights Court, is why you have freedom of expression. All because of the ECHR. And look, the rights of the convention are to protect all of us, all of our human rights. It's not just about focusing on asylum seekers. And you're not going to dump the whole thing because of asylum seekers. That would be ridiculous.
We'll have to agree to disagree then. Ivan, thank you very much for your time today. That was Ivan Sampson, immigration lawyer there. Now, folks, are you planning a lovely British beach break this weekend? I'm going to be discussing our waterways and wet wipes later on. Not a very nice one, I must say. Next, though, the former editor and media commentator Paul Connew and the political commentator Suzanne Evans are here to lock horns on this week's news.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
As we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Darren Grimes. I'm in for Laurence Fox on this glorious Good Friday. I'm joined here in the studio by the former editor and media commentator Paul Connew and political commentator Suzanne Evans to reflect on some of this week's news as well as looking ahead to the weekend. I first of all would like both of your thoughts on the migrant barge. Suzanne, I'm going to come to you first. I don't know if you heard the last segment there with Ivan Sampson, the immigration lawyer, talking about the Dorset barge. I mean, are you for this? The British people are saying, look, we like this, more of this, please.
Well, I think the British people like it, but I think not everybody lives in Dorset, and clearly the people of Dorset don't like it at all. Both the local MP and the mayor have, I think, quite rightly expressed concerns about the damage it will do to the tourism industry, and also the fact of the cost of this. It's a gimmick, I think, to be honest, Darren. I think it's a sticking plaster. There's a massive problem with the asylum backlog. It's at a 20-year high. 160,000 people waiting for their cases to be processed. This is is nothing. A barge for 500 people. That's just yesterday and today's illegal crossings across the Channel.
Yes.
And it's full. No, I mean, I really feel for Dorset, actually, being put in this situation. There's going to be a problem also, I think, with the tourism industry. We need umpteen barges like this, but ultimately, and I think your previous interviewee was absolutely, the immigration lawyer was spot on, this is not a deterrent. It's not going to solve the problem. There's only one solution to this, and that's stop the boats coming across the Channel and get rid of this asylum backlog. But I totally agree with what he was saying about we need to have genuine asylum seekers coming in, and we should do more of that. I've always said that.
But 500,000 last year, though, it's a big number, isn't it, Suzanne?
Well, 500,000 is the kind of net migration figure.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure I agree with his saying that we should take in 100,000.
100,000 every year.
That's 20% is quite big. But
yeah, Paul, 100,000 every year, what do you reckon?
That's not out of the question. I mean, I think we've got to look at this realistically. We are an ageing population. We need more legal migrants. We need an asylum system that works, not with 1% of last year's entry being processed. And this is political, gimmickry. The barge is gimmickry, so is the Rwanda plan. They are no solution. And what's more, we now have the absurd situation, ironic as a Labour supporter, of a Tory MP, a Tory council, now siding with the Refugee Council and the opposition parties and saying this is absurd and ridiculous. And we have the former Home Secretary Priti Patel and the current Foreign Secretary James Cleverly saying about other plans, not on our patch.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well, Paul, though, what do you think? Many of my viewers are saying, but where do people go when they come here? If we do increase migration numbers, where do people go? Because right now we've got significant housing shortages, and as you know, the NHS is in a total state.
But the NHS is in a total state, but the NHS badly needs more skilled, and also we need in the social care sector, not so clearly skilled, but we need immigrants. We have got to build, even this government are accepting the level of immigration, which bears no relation to the tens of thousands that was being, that would be absolutely impossible. This is just another legacy of the Brexit disaster.
Oh, Suzanne, is this the Brexit disaster?
Let me go back to what Paul was saying first about needing more immigrants. Yeah, well, certainly the NHS certainly needs more staff. I think it would be much better if it trained up its own people. There are tens of thousands of people want to become nurses every year and they're turned down. But come on, care home, NHS, these are not the kind of migrants we want. I thought it was quite interesting that the people that are going to be housed in this barge are all young, single men. They are not genuine asylum seekers.
Depends where they're from.
People trying it from. They are not. We know for a fact that a lot of them are criminals. We absolutely know that from past experience and past criminal events that have happened from people who've come across on these boats.
That's a sweeping generalisation.
Well, hang on, they don't have any ID. If they weren't criminals, they wouldn't be chucking their ID overboard before they got here, would they? They are not the kind of people that I want looking after my elderly relatives in a care home.
You've got to look at it. You've got to look at every application properly. That's such a sweeping generalisation that they're all criminals. I mean, really is.
I didn't say they were all criminals, but I did say that most of them chucked their ID overboard, which rather suggests criminal intent.
But Suzanne, as someone that I know was very passionate about Brexit, do you put this down to Brexit? Is it Brexit's fault?
It's absolutely not. I mean, this problem was before Brexit happened, and it's going to continue until after Brexit. They don't care about whether we're in the European Union or not. They just care about whether or not they can get in. And I do find it deeply disappointing, as I suspect you do too, Darren, as well, that the successive governments we've had, all Tory, but successive prime ministers and governments we've had since that 2016 vote have not really taken advantage or used the opportunity.
But on Rwanda, for example, we had the pathetic sight last Sunday of the Home Secretary who clearly didn't even know about the incident in which 12 protesters, migrant protesters, were shot dead in Rwanda. And we also have the fact that there is a report from the Home Office's own research grouping that says that Rwanda is not a safe country.
OK, but Paul, what do you say because actually Suzanne's view is the view of, and I'm sure you would accept this, the view of the majority out there of British people. Poll after poll show us that actually people want fewer migrants, not more. So do you think that actually...
But they also want more nurses. They also want more people
yes,
in
but as
social
Suzanne
care. They
says,
also need more people cleaning the streets
doctors and nurses aren't coming over in dinghies, though, are they?
No, some do. For example, at the moment, the government's policy is such that if a desperate Afghan who worked for the UK forces, in Afghanistan, but who missed out on getting over here when the airlift, happened, then if they arrived on a dinghy, because there's no other safe way for them to get here, that's not a safe way to get here, but it's one way of getting here, then under the current policy, they would be deported. I mean, that is nonsense.
And Suzanne, is Brexit not complete until we leave the ECHR? Is that the solution to all of these issues?
Well, it's certainly one solution, but ultimately for me, Darren, what it comes down to is government will. We can leave any organisation we like. If the government in power doesn't have the will to tackle this problem, and I'm afraid I think that's what we've seen from the Conservative Party, then it's not going to stop.
All right.
But it's interesting that a recent poll showed...
Now, we'll bring you back, Paul, I promise. Now, coming up, folks, are you heading to a UK beach or watery beauty spot? What's in the water, though? That's the problem, because the government has announced it's going to be banning wet wipes. Will that actually turn the tide of pollution? Did you see what I did there? Before that, more debate with the panel. We'll be back in 3.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. I'm still Darren Grimes and I'm still in for Laurence Fox. We'll continue with the panel. Suzanne Evans, political commentator on my right, and Paul Connew, media commentator and former editor on my left. Now, let's kick off, first of all, with that Labour poster. Now, we're going to show it on screen there and we'll be able to discuss it. It says, do you think adults convicted of sexually assaulting children should go to prison? And then it argues that Rishi Sunak doesn't. We've just got it on screen for my radio listeners and viewers, obviously, on telly. Now, it says, under the Tories, 4,500 adults convicted of sexually assaulting children under 16 served no prison time. Labour will lock up dangerous child abusers. I mean, Paul, what did you make of this poster? Do you think this is clever campaigning?
I'm a Labour supporter, but I thought it was crass and badly judged, and I'm surprised that Keir Starmer hasn't yet, last I looked anyway, hadn't actually disowned it. The points there are the stats are right and are scandalous, but to target it on Rishi Sunak personally was a blunder. But it's clearly part of what's going to be a key issue in the local elections and the next general election is going to be law and order. And at the moment, surprisingly, you might think Labour have a clear lead on which party the public, according to the polls, and which party would be better equipped to tackle crime. And what's interesting too, both sides are throwing, if you like, dirt at each other here. In fact, we've had Keir Starmer being branded as a friend of the people smugglers in Parliament by Rishi Sunak, which was grossly unfair too. And we also have figures that show that the public are torn on this issue. But I was the editor who was legally thwarted from exposing Jimmy Savile in 1994. And the trouble is that the police have never taken this seriously enough.
Yeah.
But the fact is that where Labour mistake in targeting Sunak, it's not the Prime Minister or even the government who decide the sentences for child sex abusers. It is the judges or magistrates' court, depending on where they're tried.
Saying that it's an issue of fairness, really, isn't it? But Suzanne, I mean, do you remember when Boris Johnson had said to Sir Keir Starmer, you were Director of Public Prosecutions, you were soft on, you mentioned Jimmy Savile.
And that was
soft on
too.
Jimmy Savile.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But has there been the same level of condemnation, do you think, for this poster, this campaigning, as there was when Boris Johnson came out and said, well, you were soft on Jimmy Savile?
I think there has been I was quite heartened this morning, actually, to see quite a lot of senior Labour commentators talking about this. There was almost universal cross-party
Not politicians, though, not a lot of those.
A couple of politicians.
Although Lucy Powell was on the media round this
Lucy
morning.
Powell sort of ducked and dived and didn't want to totally condemn it, didn't want to condone it either. But my old friend Kevin Maguire, the lead political man on the Daily Mirror, has come out and called it totally unacceptable.
It's the politics of the gutter. It really is. Under the Tories, the advert says, well, that's presumably since 2010. Well, that's not just before Sunak became PM, it's before he even became an MP.
Yes.
So to say that he was instrumental is nonsense. I think Paul's absolutely right. There's absolutely no doubt it was judges and magistrates making these decisions, and they almost certainly wouldn't have been sent to jail under a...
And one of the reasons, of course, for their decisions, in part, is the fact that our prison system is in such a mess. Yep. There aren't the places in prison to pull them.
Well, I mean, we're currently apparently, we're going to put migrants into former prisons.
What a mess. I mean, you just can't win. But, when the Conservatives did become elected to government in 2010, I remember one of the first things that David Cameron did, he stood up and he said, I'm going to put an end to Punch and Judy politics. And I thought, hooray. Well, it didn't happen. It's just got worse and worse and worse. And the atmosphere in politics is febrile.
Partly boosted by social media, which is in fact which has turned the level of abuse and hate
to be said, isn't there, about Twitter ruining political debate?
It's not just Twitter. I remember when my daughter was about 3 years old and we were listening to Yesterday in Parliament on Radio 4, and she said, "What is this, Mummy?" And I said, "Oh, it's Parliament. She said, it's worse than the playground. And that's out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, speaking of Twitter, a man that used to be quite big on it is former President Donald J. Trump. I want to play this clip of Trump, and then I'm going to go to Paul, who knows Mr. Trump.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number 1. Impeachment hoax number 2. The illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, right here.
Now, Paul, as I mentioned there, tell us about your background with President Trump.
Well, I knew him pretty well back long before he entered politics, when he was a controversial media-courting businessman, and then, of course, later on became a TV superstar. But he was never fit to be president. In fact, if somebody had told me at that stage that he's going to become president of the United States, I would have sent out for men in white coats to have come and taken them away.
But do you think he's got a point on this being a witch hunt, a political witch hunt led by Democrats?
I don't see it as a political witch hunt, but I do think it's a great pity that the first case involving him is on the weakest element, the Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, the Playboy payoff case, Playmate, payoff aspect. That is the weakest case. The really important ones, which really should matter, are the inciting the insurrection at Capitol Hill, and perhaps even more, equally crucial, trying to meddle in the Georgia election result. That is the work of a deluded, dangerous autocrat.
Well, I mean, Suzanne, a lot of my viewers would be saying, oh, come on, President Trump didn't try to incite that riot, that actually, on so many issues, the Russia collusion lines that were proven to be demonstrably false.
I mean, you and I were accused of
Of course, yeah, we've all been in cahoots with Russia.
In the Vote Leave campaign.
But,
it was utter nonsense.
Ultimately, there has been a concerted effort against this man. So a lot of my viewers are saying, hang on a minute, this is a stitch-up.
Yeah, it is. It is a political witch hunt. I don't agree with Paul on that. They're just trying to do anything they can to stop him running for president at the next election.
But ironically,
they're making it about him. They're making it personal. It's playing the man, not the ball. They're making it about him rather than Joe Biden's myriad economic, social and geopolitical failures.
Yeah, because wars under Trump.
Ironically, though, this prosecution, at least this first one, will probably clinch him the Republican nomination, but hopefully I think it'll cost the Republicans the next presidential election.
I mean, Suzanne, are you hoping that actually it's Ron DeSantis? Because you quite like him, don't you?
I do, yeah. I mean, I really quite liked what Trump said in that clip that you just played. That he wants to fearlessly protect our nation from those who seek to destroy it. And I'm afraid there is a strong left-wing element in American society, as there is here, that basically wants to rip up the.
There's also a very strong right-wing one.
Yeah.
But Trump is a cult leader with a huge cult following, and that's dangerous.
It's a very big following. Now, folks, thank you, of course, to Suzanne Evans and Paul Connew. Don't forget that you can stay with GB News all Easter weekend on DAB+, turn on your radios, keep yourself up to date and informed on the go. Now, coming up, I'm going to be talking about those waterways and wet wipe wars, and later on, it's going to be Mark Dolan tonight, so you're going to want to stay right there and not miss a single minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Darren Grimes, and you've had a lot to say about tonight's show, I'm delighted to say. Here's a few of your comments. Richard has wrote in and he said, whoever is orchestrating these tweets is obviously not very bright. He's talking about Labour, of course. They will only help shine a light on Labour as the nasty party in the eyes of the public. Keith, he wrote in and he said, surely if these people have no identification, and of course this is about migrants, illegal migrants, they should be sent in. Oh, it was Maurice, not Keith. And he said they should be sent back as we don't know who they are. And that's what I was saying to Ivan Sampson at the start of the show there, right? It's an issue of national security, if you ask me. And Maurice is next. Maurice says, I think the king will make a real Charlie of himself if he goes much further with his apologies over historic slavery. He must allow common sense to reign. And I think that's right. I think actually the king is actually, it's such an own goal here to actually do this, because ultimately it's going to open up one hell of a can of worms when, let's not forget, folks, this nation spent a hell of a lot of its GDP and naval lives in actually abolishing the slave trade around the globe. Now, another viewer says, my daughter is a social worker. This morning she's been called to Dover to assess whether 20 people who've arrived on small boats are children, as they claim. Already these people are trying to bend our rules because unaccompanied children, minors who come to the UK illegally, won't be removed to a safe third country until adulthood, except in limited circumstances. We are a joke. I agree with that completely. I think we're a soft touch. As I said to Ivan again, France rejects way more asylum claims than we do. Why are we the mugs of Europe? Lisa says prisons should be hell, not care homes. Bring back capital punishment. Well, Lisa, I think there are a fair few people, including Lee Anderson of this parish, who believe in that view as well. And folks, thank you very much, as ever, for getting in touch. Your views are much more important than mine. Now, the gloom of winter is passing, and for a change, we've had glorious weekend of weather for this bank holiday. So if you're having a great British break to the coast, no rest for the wicked here, or even if you plan on taking the family to your local beauty spot, are you concerned about what's going to be in the water to greet you? We used to be proud of our beaches, didn't we? So what's gone on? Well, the Environment Minister, Therese Coffey, has pledged to end the wasteful wet wipe epidemic, blocking our sewers and blighting the countryside. Is that enough to turn the tide and take back our glorious waterways? Well, joining me to discuss is Sean Sutherland, from A Plastic Planet. Sean, thank you very much for your time today. Let me know, why are these wet wipes such a big problem? Because many of my viewers might be using these things and not think they're an issue.
They seem so innocuous, don't they? And I don't know, we can probably not imagine life without the wet wipe. 11 billion wet wipes we're using in the UK every single year, and they're causing 93% of the blockages in our sewers. So this news is from the government. It's not new news. We've been talking about this. We've been consulting on this for many years now. Back in 2021, consultation from the government then, 96% of the respondents backed a ban on wipes. And yet here we are, we're still talking about it and no action has been taken.
Now, Sean, are you of the view then that the government, I assume you're very supportive of this from the government, of an outright ban, but are the government doing enough to actually ensure that there, frankly, isn't a load of filth in our waterways?
It's shocking what we've done to our rivers, isn't it? I mean, if you look and you think we take stuff from nature and we give it back as nothing but trash, 6 billion tons of trash we give back to the planet every single year. And what it comes down to, Darren, is chemicals. So a lot of the sewage spillages, the plastic that we're talking about with the wet wipes, things that is coming off from the agricultural fields, fertilizers, pesticides, all of these things are toxic chemicals. Nature is pretty binary. Whatever we give back to nature, it can either use as a food or a poison. And the majority of what we are giving back is a poison. And we can see, look at the images that you're showing now. It's shocking what we have done to nature.
I mean, Sean, is it the case that the government here, laudable aims and objectives, but is it the government? Do you blame the water companies themselves?
Well, for these sewage leaks, I do blame the water companies because they have not put the investment in when they needed to. I think that the fines, however, they may look like large numbers. To be honest, a little bit like the plastic tax, these things can just be considered the cost of doing business now. The huge profits that the water companies are making, just the same as the plastic companies, they can absorb these costs as a cost of business. So we need to create more laws. Much as we love to live in a libertarian society, we don't like to ban things. But at the moment, things like wet wipes, we should say, why is it still legal? Now we know the damage that these cause. 93% of all blockages, and this is a large reason why we've got sewage overflows into the fields, into the rivers, into our streams and waterways. If 93% of that is a simple wet wipe, I think that we can live without them, don't you? So we just need to ban them. We cannot expect industry to do it alone. They won't.
Even the plastic, in face washes and things like that. I mean, I quite naively, Sean, didn't know anything about these things until the government actually banned them. We just don't think about these everyday goods.
I bet you're thinking, when you're thinking about those, you're thinking about the little scrubby bits that you see. Maybe you've got a scrubby hand wash, for gardening or something. Actually, it's much more insidious than that. The plastic that is in all the products that we use, that massive category, all the beauty products and moisturizers and shampoos, everything that we use, even foundation that we put on our skin, even lipsticks, they all contain plastic. 98% of them contain plastic. It's the things that we use to give it a thickening. So they're called acrylates, products like that. They're actually just plastic. And of course, you put it on your face, we wash our hair with it, we condition our hair, we wash it down the plug hole. These things are invisible to the human eye. They go
Yeah.
straight out into the waterways, into our soil. What's more important than having healthy soil in our British fields, and then of course straight out into the oceans.
Okay, Sean, we're going to have to leave it there, but I hope you have a really, really good bank holiday weekend. That's Sean Sutherland from A Plastic Planet there. Now, folks, I've been Darren Grimes and I've been sitting in for Laurence Fox, who's back in the chair next Friday from 7 o'clock. Don't forget, you can tune in online and on DAB Plus all bank holiday to stay up to date. Up next, it's Mark Dolan. Stay here.
Hello again. The fine weather many of us have had through today will continue overnight. That does mean it will turn chilly under largely clear skies, but then tomorrow brings plenty of dry and warm sunny weather, all because of high pressure which is dominating the picture across the UK, keeping fronts in the west at bay. But we are going to see this weak front trying to push its way in from the North Sea. Now that's going to bring a little bit more cloud to eastern and northeastern parts of the UK, and also some rain. Could turn a little bit heavy at times over eastern parts of Scotland overnight. Elsewhere, there'll be often clear skies, and under these clear skies, temperatures are going to take a bit of a dip. Whilst it won't be quite as cold as last night for most, it could still be a touch frosty for some, and watch out for a few patches of mist and fog in the south later in the night. For many then on Saturday, getting off to a bright start with plenty of sunshine. Still some cloud across eastern northeastern parts, but most of the rain will clear away, and a good chunk of the cloud's going to